This is honestly, though, good for the league that KD and Booker that the Nuggets are gonna beat KD and Booker because 8 games played in the regular season. Durant only played 8 games in the regular season for this Phoenix Suns team, and there is still a world where they're able to get past this Nuggets team. They're able to like, this team is still a title contending team. This team was still in the title conversation. Just that kind of instantaneously being thrown together, and if it had actually worked and resulted in an NBA title, it's just like all hell breaks loose in the NBA at that point. It's like the peak sort of player empowerment thing that happens in the NBA that just like these teams can be Team USA, throw them together last minute, and all of a sudden they're competing for and winning NBA titles. So the fact that they're going to potentially come up short this year, still, in contention. Durant and Booker, they had their games where they were battling, where they were high level. Booker's playoff run is going to be one to remember from a shooting standpoint. But now they have to go into next year, play a full season together, be a real basketball team together. There's off-season stuff. There may be moves that are made, but Durant and Booker as the core of this team, at least now they have to go through an entire regular season together instead of just this sort of last minute patch together thing. It would have been bad for the league. You can't play 8 games together and win the title. That's just not right.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with your point. When you look at stars who have been traded, it has been getting progressively worse. LeBron went from one team to the next and to the next when his contract was done. Did he hold those teams hostage? Pretty much sabotaging them, maybe, but at least he waited until his contract was done. KD to the Warriors, I think that was at the end of his contract, and then you
Yeah, free
have
agency.
James Harden. Yeah, that was the end of his contract. And then you have James Harden pretty much wearing a fat suit, to get out of Houston. Who knows? We know he definitely he added a couple pounds. I mean, you look at those games. I mean, it
There's
was
photographic
near.
evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
They're pictures.
questioning the integrity of the team of him, like to just throw games like that. In some of those games, it was just bad. Maybe we should check him for betting. And then you have Kyrie bouncing around, and going to the Nets. Ben Simmons as well. Him just not playing, just straight up not playing. I mean, that's just wild to think. A player of his
Yeah.
caliber just decided not to play, and there's been some back injuries, some mental health injury stuff that has been mentioned, but and then this was kind of the climax. Kyrie going in, he's saying out at the beginning of the year. KD wants to get traded, now he doesn't, and it's back and forth, and then they do get what they want, and I think the league has kind of straightened out. It's kind of gone to the way it should. I may not believe in them, but the basketball gods have kind of straightened out. And you look at the teams that are succeeding. The Heat have been together for several years. Great chemistry there. Looking at who else in the East? I don't know why I'm forgetting. 76ers. That team, that structure. I mean, they just added James Harden, but that structure has pretty much been built for what 3 years now. They made pretty much a Eastern semifinal run with this team, one shot away from the conference finals. Celtics, we already know their history. Warriors, we know their history. Lakers, they've been together, won a championship together. And then the Nuggets, we already know, and then the Suns is the last case. So, and just looking at the drop for the Mavs, I mean, they were almost a sure shot to make the playoffs. What was it, 93%?
Yeah.
And drop to 2%. I mean, it's just wild. So, like you mentioned, it's definitely great for the league, and that it got figured out. And the Suns probably just because of the insane talent of Booker. I mean, Booker's been dragging this team, literally dragging this team to this point, both of these series. So, especially now with Chris Paul out, it's definitely. I mean, he's been out already. They've won games without him, but with him being out, continuing to be out, that's got to take a toll at some point. And yeah, I'm definitely happy that the league is straightening out and the teams that are together and been building together are winning. And you can see that chemistry with Jamal Murray and Jokic versus KD and his kind of stodgy, ISO ball, and Booker kind of doing his ISO ball stuff. And you can see that, even with DeAndre Ayton, they had
Hmm.
problems with him at the beginning of the year. They didn't know if they were going to bring him back. So Yeah, there's just so many examples of these teams who kind of had to do what they kind of had to do for the front office, but for the players making problematic locker rooms, and it's going to play out at some point. It's gonna show up.
So going back into the offseason, you brought up DeAndre Ayton. There was rumblings that they could have traded for Durant in the offseason, traded DeAndre Ayton. But at the time, there were questions, is Ayton too much? What is ultimately the package going to be? The Suns, maybe we want to run, that trade is going to be there later. Let's see what we have with this core. Fast forward to the trade deadline, they give up Bridges, they give up Johnson, they give up these wing defenders, these shooters, and Ayton, he's a big man, number one overall pick, $30 million a year. He's potential, but I feel like this playoff series specifically, Jokic is an impossible task, but there is definitely some effort stuff with Ayton. There is definitely some of the rebounding stuff. He hasn't gotten to double-digit rebounds in any of the games in this series. He is the center on this team. There's just some things that he has shown in this series that, looking back, would that have been better for this team to move Ayton for Durant and keep Bridges and Johnson versus giving up all that wings, the depth, the shooting? And Bridges, Bridges, we can't say enough about what Bridges has done in Brooklyn, his upside.
Well,
Maybe he doesn't emerge as this, but would you rather have those guys over Ayton in the playoffs?
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think this goes a little bit back to our NFL draft talk where we talked about running backs being traded, getting so high, and when you look at positional value, some of the best guys in the league are centers, but it's much easier to get a center in production from that in this league than it is to get quality wings, quality guards. And when you look at, or not really guards, there are a lot of guards, but quality wings, like the wing depth.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at how their minutes and rotation has been going, Lawndale has been creeping up in minutes. He has been showing a little bit better fit, which is wild to say. But imagine if they kept Jalen Smith. They have Lawndale, so they have that depth. They trade Ayton, maybe throw in Cam Johnson too, a couple picks. But having Mikal Bridges on this team would have just helped so much more in terms of his ceiling. Like we see him. He can be a legitimate scorer. He can get hot. Him on the defensive side, his consistency and how much he plays, and no issues ever. I mean, you could really see that he really wanted to be on the team. He really loved the guys. He really loved being in Phoenix, and he really knows how to be part of his community. Shout out to him. I think he went out to the Bronx, and he did a video with a TikToker. Shout out Aki Way, but. He really, his consistency in playing. I think he registered like 1 minute in the final game to keep playing, but you know what you're getting from him. And with Ayton, it's just so up and down. And his value, I think that's one thing all people kind of forgot with Ayton. His value kind of only matters with how much Chris Paul plays, because Chris Paul is the only player who kind of really uses him. Booker doesn't care who's in front of him. He's going to shoot over everyone. What was it? End of the third quarter, last game, that was at home where he was getting double teamed and he just drained a three. Like, he's just so hot right now, it doesn't matter. So he doesn't care who's on him. He doesn't need to create a shot like Chris Paul. And now with Chris Paul injured, Chris Paul declining, so is Ayton's play, because he was the main guy who made him valuable. When you look at that playoff series, that's why he was playing so great, because he was being put in these positions to succeed because he had the point guard on his team. And now you have an issue where Ayton, where Booker is expecting more out of Ayton, and Ayton not getting the ball as much, is not putting in as much effort. He wasn't number one pick, right? Or number two?
Yeah.
I think so he's top 3 pick. And he of course he wants his shots and he thinks he's the guy. And not when you have Booker and KD on the team. So like we mentioned, he's been talking a lot and he hasn't had the play back it up. And that compounded with Chris Paul being injured, his play just falling off a cliff this year is going to hurt his play. And, I've got so much stock in Mikal Bridges. So you're completely right. And, we're seeing it right now where Booker and KD literally have to score 70 to 80 points for them to even win a game.
We're going to see the ramifications of them losing that depth, because if you look at their salary cap, you look at the guys that they have on contract long term, you just look at the number of guys. There's some big question marks for this team headed into the offseason. Some moves might potentially have to be made. So, I'm just glad they'll have to that, like you said, they'll get the playoff scars and they'll have to face the entire regular season to make the title run again next year because Durant's there long term, Booker's there long term. But we'll see if this core and the rest of this team is the team that they want to bring back in 2023, 2024.
And we do have Sarver out of there. So there we could see a different outlook on salaries. But getting to a little
True.
bit of real life, a U.S. bankruptcy judge just blocked a new TV deal for the Suns. So that's less money they're expecting. And, they're definitely going to be needing more money to pay for this team. Again, we mentioned this new CBA, but I think if that's going to have some serious effects. And, now you have Katie on your roster. You got all these egos. It's definitely the Katie move was definitely a spur of the moment kind of move. I think Matt, the new owner, it makes sense. When you have a chance to get a player like that, you do it. But they could have definitely taken some time figuring out the deal, and they're gonna have to take a real long, hard look in the mirror because Chris Paul and Aiden's production has really dipped, and you can either do the Warriors model of having the top four guys, and then you have decent players around them, or you just have a deep team. But you can't have top two guys and no bench, and Josh and Koji for a whole season. All of them. It's just it won't work out. But we'll have to see. It's kind of sad, because Mikal just wanted to be on the team so bad. He definitely would have loved to play with KD, but alas, so the dice roll.